just start. We'll wait till some people log on though.
Okay, perfect. Go live. Should I do it on Instagram?
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna go duly live on Instagram. It'll all be on the video though, so it'll be good.
All right.
Perfect. Are we both in that one?
Beautiful. What's up, guys?
Good morning, everybody.
We're just gonna wait like 30 seconds and wait for people to jump on. What's up? Good morning.
Yay.
Good
Hello.
afternoon.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us this morning. Sweet, sweet. All right. So today we are going to be talking about natural birth control methods and some of the options that you have out there, and then maybe some of the, we'll be talking about more traditional or synthetic hormonal birth control methods as well, and sort of how those work, and maybe some cons, more of the cons to those, and then just some other options that you do have available to you if you're not wanting to do anything synthetic or have any hormones or anything like that in your system. So yeah, so awesome. There's my phone. Oh, sweet. All right.
Cool.
You want to start? You want to get started?
Yeah, so we're really excited to be talking about birth control today. When we were at the Taboo show in Vancouver, we had a lot of questions about natural birth control alternatives, and also people just not really knowing what option could be better for them, because there's a lot of misinformation about birth control. And I can only speak from my own personal experience, but when I was younger and I had all of these crazy symptoms, the doctors put me on birth control very, very quickly at a young age. I think I was 13 or 14 when they put me on birth control. And because I didn't know any better, I didn't know what my options were. I didn't have very much information. So of course you just roll with the punches and you trust the doctor and you do what they tell you. So when I got my period, I struggled a lot with really painful periods, to the point where I would pass out. They were completely unbearable. And so the doctor put me on birth control. It took me a really long time to find a birth control that actually worked for me. As some of you may have known or experienced in the past, when a woman tries new birth control, sometimes they don't align very well, and you can have all sorts of mood swings or go like quote unquote crazy. I don't know how I feel about saying that, but sometimes they really do mess with your hormones, because you are essentially putting exogenous hormones into your body.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. So it took me a while to find a birth control that worked for me, but then when I found one, I felt great on the birth control. My periods didn't bother me. They were very regular. I was really high functioning, and I don't feel like they affected my mood at all. However, when I learned more about hormonal birth control and what it does to the body, I decided to go off the pill, and then I got a huge wave of symptoms. And I was like, what the heck's going on? Anyways, it turns out that I have endometriosis, and I had no idea, because one of the treatments for endometriosis is to go on birth control, because hormonal therapy is very common for this. And I had no idea that I had endometriosis, because birth control was masking my symptoms for the majority of my teenage life. So now I know I have endometriosis, and I can do other things holistically to manage these symptoms, whereas birth control was just masking them for a very long time. So that was my sort of experience with it. Am I rambling right now?
No.
Okay.
I'll talk about, I had like a different experience with the pill. I went on when I was 19, and I didn't really, again, well, I guess it's kind of the same. I didn't really notice a difference until I went off, because I was like, everything's fine. This is cool. And I felt I didn't have any like crazy symptoms, but I just felt like really steady. So I was like, this is good. The one thing that did bother me a bit on it was like just the consistency of my period. I noticed the actual consistency changes. This might be too much information, but it became like much more like tacky or like maroon. It didn't really feel like blood. It's supposed to be blood. And it didn't really bother me much until I went off. And so as soon as I went off, what happened for me was my libido just went like through the roof. I was like, holy smokes. I didn't realize like how muted everything was. Like I was just like, as soon as I went off, like I was like, all like boys smell so good and they look so good, and I was just like, I want to be near them all the time. And I had never really felt like that. I was kind of like, oh, I just don't feel like a particularly like horny person. Like I'd appreciate like an attractive person, but I never felt like huge like urges. But then as soon as I went off the pill, I was like, I want to like just jump everybody's bones. And it was great. And also like confusing is like I didn't realize how much it had been affecting me. And then again, the consistency of my period just came right back to like, it just felt more natural. And I mean, some people may not like that. They're like, I don't want it to be like super fluid and bloody, but I actually appreciated it. I was like, oh, this just feels like natural. It feels more the way it's supposed to be. So I have not been back on since. I've tried a couple other things, but we'll talk about those in a bit. But that was the one. I went on one other hormonal. The only other hormonal method of birth control I used was the NuvaRing. I quite liked it. It's just a ring that you put up inside your vagina, goes around your cervix, and it stays there for 3 weeks, and then you take it out. And so it's much more localized hormones, so it doesn't go all the way through your system, which is much better. You're not like digesting it, it's not going into your bloodstream. And the consistency of my period stayed the same. My libido was pretty okay. It just certainly not as much as the pill. So as far as hormonal methods go, I'm probably not going to ever use hormonal methods again, but if I were, like the NuvaRing, I preferred much more over the contraceptive pill.
Yeah.
That's cool. My experience with that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, did you want to talk about some of like the major drawbacks of, or some of the risks, I guess, associated with hormonal contraception?
So there are a few different types of birth control sort of classified into like hormonal birth control, which we're talking about oral contraceptives right now. There's the patch, there's the ring like Kendra just mentioned, and then there's also a shot that you can get. And then there's also barrier methods of birth control. So barrier methods would be things like condoms or a diaphragm.
Diaphragm. I haven't heard anybody use a diaphragm. Just like a long, it feels very like 80s or something. Or like the sponge, which they talk about in Seinfeld. I don't know if I'm dating myself, but like the sponge, there used to be sponges that you could put in.
There's
covered with spermicide.
Spermicide, so like, and spermicide will help to like kill the sperm. And actually, in like diaphragm sidebar always make me think of Sex in the City when Carrie got her diaphragm stuck.
And Samantha. I totally forgot.
I would do that for
Those
you.
I haven't heard anybody. I don't know anybody my age or younger that I've ever heard of using sponges or diaphragms. But whatever.
Because there's so many other options now. So barrier methods, and then of course there's like surgical methods where you get your tubes tied or a vasectomy. So, and then of course the natural holistic methods, which we will get to very shortly. So with hormonal birth control, just from a nutritional standpoint, I think it's really important to mention that, that you are inserting a bunch of hormones into your body. So this is going to affect your body's natural hormone rhythm. Not only that, is birth control has been shown to have gastrointestinal side effects as well. So it can definitely mess up your digestion and as well as upset your gut flora. It can be a burden on the liver because everything is metabolized by the liver. So you're adding an extra liver burden on top of that because you are adding in extra hormones, you are adding in extra estrogen, and you can get an estrogen buildup in the liver as well. Nutritional deficiencies, very common ones when you are taking birth control, are B vitamins. So folic acid, you have B6, B12, and B vitamins are actually in charge of our metabolism. So when we have a B vitamin deficiency, this can lead to all sorts of symptoms from like mental wellness. So you might struggle with depression and anxiety. It can lead to blood clots, and this can also affect anemia in some people as well. And this can also lead to weight fluctuations in some individuals. On top of that, you can struggle with mineral deficiencies. So birth control has been shown to affect the levels of magnesium and selenium and zinc. And we just wanted to give a shout out to Melissa Ramos because we love her. Oh. You might know Melissa Ramos. She has a page called Sexy Food Therapy. She is a nutritionist and she struggles with Hashimoto's, which is a thyroid condition. And she talks about how birth control can affect your zinc levels. And this will also affect your thyroid function and your thyroid hormones as well.
Yeah. Sexy Food Therapy. Check out her. She has videos that she does every week, and she has like a specific program that's all about balancing hormones. So like lots of people with endometriosis, or specific hormonal issues related to female reproductive parts. She like specializes in that. She has tons of information. She's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
She does lots of stuff on fertility as well. So check her out. We love her. She's also Canadian. Go Canada.
Yeah.
She's in Toronto.
She's awesome. Represent. So she talks about too how like synthetic hormones and synthetic estrogen this can help. This will reduce your thyroid hormones as well. So it's super fascinating. And yes, there are side effects to putting in these hormones or putting these hormones into your body. Mm-hmm. So why not try a method where you actually don't have to add in any exogenous hormones and you can let your body do its job like it was meant to do. So let's talk about some of those.
Cool. Well, first I want to mention somebody had brought up IUD on the Instagram live that we have going as well. And so IUDs, there's two different types. You can have ones that do have hormones and they release some hormone. Again, it's localized, so it doesn't have as many side effects as the pill. And you can leave it up there for, some 5 to 10 years even. So it's more effective from the pill, even just from a use perspective. And it's still some hormones, so it's still hormones. So the side effects that Sarah mentioned can still come into play. There's the copper IUD as well, which has 0 hormones. I personally have used the copper IUD because I didn't want to use one that had hormones. And it has some other side effects. So it makes your periods heavier, generally. Mine much heavier, like almost twice as long as they used to be, and more painful. I hadn't had cramps since I was like 16, 17. And then I was like doubled over, like could not stand up, like needed to take Advil. And I don't like taking Advil for the first time in like many years, especially for the first 6 months. It was really tough. And then I kept it in for 2 years. You're allowed to keep it in for 5, but I took it out early just because it's still like my periods actually smelled like copper, and it was just, and I felt constantly like a little bit inflamed, which you have like this piece of metal that's up in your uterus that's doing a really good job. I didn't get pregnant. I mean, it worked. And it was always just, my periods were more painful, and I always just felt like a little bit extra bloated, and I just, there was a foreign object like sitting in my body long term. And I think it could have just been all in my head. I didn't like the idea. And so I just decided to get it taken out. I felt like it was interfering with even my creative process. I felt like I'm blocking my fertility and my creative juices, and I just don't like that. So personal preference, but yes, there are IUDs that have no hormones as an option. And they're very, very effective as far as birth control goes. But yeah, we're also going to talk about some other ones that are completely natural.
Yeah, and keep in mind, like all of the methods that we're talking about today, none of them are 100% effective. I do have friends who have gotten pregnant while being on the IUD. I can name 2 of them actually. One of them was a copper IUD as well. Okay. So like it is important that just to keep in mind that none of these methods are 100% effective. Even the holistic methods that we're going to give you as well. Like there's always still a chance that you could get pregnant. And on top of that, none of these methods will protect you from STDs or STIs, except for the barrier methods, which would be using like a condom. Mm-hmm. So,
and somebody had asked or had just said female condom, mentioned the female condom. Female condoms are great, especially if you have a latex allergy. When used effectively, they are as effective against pregnancy and STIs as like regular condoms. And the usage, the effective, I don't know what the proper term is, the effective use rate is less than regular condoms. They're a bit more difficult to use, apparently, according to statistics, than the male condom. So it's slightly less effective in practice against, in terms of preventing pregnancy. And they're safe. They count as barrier method. They're great. They protect against STIs, STDs, and they're great for people who have a latex allergy, or if there's no penis and you just want to be having, you need to put the condom somewhere. It's perfect. So yeah, that's all I have to say about the female condom, I think. So we'll get into some of our holistic methods. As Sarah said, none of them are 100%, but no birth control is 100%. There is always room for error because we're humans, and there's always ways to use these incorrectly or ineffectively, or there's just room for error. But with the holistic methods as well, I'd like to say that they can be as effective as all of these synthetic methods when used effectively. Yeah. So as long as you are following the rules and you are actually like really well informed, you're not just kind of like, oh, I'm just going to try this like on the fly. You have to educate yourself a bit more, and it maybe takes a bit more to learn and to practice them. But once in practice and once done properly, they are as effective as IUDs and all of those things.
If not, like, and this is just my own personal opinion, like, keep in mind, to disclosure, we're not doctors. This is just like information that, this is just our knowledge that we want to share with you guys, and this is my own personal opinion. But I feel like the holistic methods can be way more effective, actually, because you're not putting all the work into a pill and you're not putting all of the work into something else. You are taking responsibility and getting to learn your body better and getting to understand what ovulation might look like in your body. And I feel like that's the best knowledge that you can have, rather than just taking a pill and then having sex while you're ovulating and hoping for the best, because you're fighting your body's own physiological function, if that makes sense. So my own personal opinion, I think holistic methods are better. However, like, everyone's birth control choice is personal and private, and like, I respect that 100%. But I'm just saying, like, taking responsibility and trying one of these methods is huge, because you're going to learn so much more about your body, and like, you're putting all of the trust and responsibility on yourself.
Yeah.
So,
and you're connecting with your body in like a really like real way, organic way. It's cool.
Yeah.
So there's 3 that we're going to cover today. The 3 big holistic, all natural, you can do them yourself, birth control methods. They are the Billings Method, the basal body temperature, and period tracking, or menstruation tracking. Perfect. So we'll start with, what do you want to start with?
Let's start with menstrual tracking, because I feel like using the basal body temperature method and the Billings method, you need to learn how to track your period anyways. Luckily for us, we have all of this amazing technology, and we can just download apps on our phone right now that can help us track our periods. So keep in mind that tracking your period and just using an app to detect when you're ovulating, it's only so accurate, because again, it's an app and your body is different than a computer. So typically, if your period is at 28 days, you're probably going to start ovulating around day 14, meaning that you would be fertile from like day 12 to 14.
Day 1 is the first day of your period. So as soon as the first day that you start bleeding, that's day 1, and day 14 is typically ovulation on a
28-day cycle.
So like 7 or more ish days after your period is done. Day 1 is your first day of your period.
Yeah, exactly. And so some people's periods will last different lengths, and so having a period calculator in your phone is really helpful, because you will put in the first day of your period, second day, third day, fourth day, and then from there it will calculate when you are estimated to ovulate. So this is a really good guideline for you to kind of get an idea of when you may be ovulating. If you do this consistently over a few months, you might notice that sometimes your period is every 28 days or every 30 days, but it should be relatively close if you have a healthy and frequent cycle. If you don't have a healthy and frequent cycle, this method might not be the best for you, because you can't guarantee that you're going to ovulate at the same time every single time in your cycle. But still, tracking is helpful as well. And then, do you want to talk about Billings?
Yeah, so that leads to the Billings Method. The Billings Method is a method that was developed in 1980-ish, or around like the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, by a doctor in Australia. Her name was Dr. Evelyn Billings. And she came up with an alternative, because this was when like tons of birth control was on the rise. And she's like, this is the way to do it without drugs, without devices, putting foreign objects in your body, And so it's the basic premise of it is you're tracking your cervical mucus. So the cervical mucus, the mucus on your cervix, which is that gateway between your actual vaginal canal and your uterus. So the sperms have to get through the cervix in order to get up in there and do their thing. There's a time when you're ovulating, the mucus actually changes, and it allows and invites and actually encourages sperm through. So it actually helps that process. Other than that, it actually plugs the cervix. The mucus usually plugs it, and it doesn't even let anything in. So your cervical mucus changes with the flow of your period of your cycle, not just your period, your whole cycle. And so with this method, you test your cervical mucus every single day. So you use your finger, or your partner can use their finger. It's something you can do together as a couple. And there's different consistencies that the mucus will be. Like, it can be watery, it can be thick, it can be opaque, it can be clear. And when you're ovulating, it tends to be like egg whites. So if you were to like pinch it between your fingers, there'd be like a string between there. And that's the type of mucus where you're most fertile. That is the most base explanation. That's not enough information to actually start doing it. So there's actually a book, The Billings Method, and you can read about it. You can also read about it online. They've done studies, so they show that testing your cervical mucus and doing this on a regular basis, when done correctly. So you have to understand how to analyze the mucus, how to properly record it, how to properly take the sample, being consistent. And when you do that, studies have shown it's anywhere from 79 to 99.9. There's one study out of China, 99.9% effective. The Chinese government actually in 1995 adopted this as their official form of birth control, and they sent out this information all over the country because it's free, and everybody can do it at home. So it's like very, very effective, and it's great when you do it properly, but it is important that you do it properly. So reading the book, there are also official like Billings Method ovulation teachers that exist. You Google them. They come to your home, or you can go to them, and they'll teach you this method so that you understand that you're doing it properly. Because once you know how to do it properly, again, this can be as effective as like an IUD, like 99.5% effective. 1 in 200 women got pregnant during one study, in terms of like birth control. So it's great, and make sure that you learn it properly. Do a lot of research. One of the big things they also say with the Billings Method is if you're coming off another form of birth control, there's an adjustment period because it takes a while for your cycle to regulate again. And so it helps to use barrier methods of birth control in between. So you might use condoms for a bit while you're getting started on this method. It takes a while before you're sort of up and running, especially because they say when you're testing your cervical mucus, if you are sexually active, there could still be sperm or semen in your vaginal canal, and you can get that mixed up with the mucus, and it can be confusing. And so it's something that you need to take some time. They say either abstain. If you're between relationships, it's actually probably the best time to start learning this method, because if you're not having regular sex, great. Or if you're having sex only with using condoms and things like that, that's the best time to start practicing this. And then it becomes something that you can maintain for a lifetime, and it's very, very effective. It's wonderful. So just research it. Billings, Billings.
Yeah, and just to sort of like add on to the Billings method, like once you get used to what your discharge or your vaginal mucus looks like after a while, after you've been practicing it, you might not always need to fully insert your fingers and touch your cervix. You'll be able to recognize just by the discharge potentially in your panties or whatever sort of residue you have, hey, you know what, like I'm going to be ovulating now or tomorrow. And so using this method along with menstrual tracking as well. So once you get used to tracking your cycle, like we talked about before this, and you practice the Billings method for a little bit as well, after when you get to around day like 12, 13, 14 of your cycle, you're going to know, hey, I might be ovulating soon, and then notice and start to look for these changes in your discharge. And like Kendra said, keep in mind if you are having regular sex, because there could be like sperm residue and all of this stuff, but keep an eye on your discharge in around day 14, and then you will start to notice what it looks like, and you will notice the difference, and you're like, wow. And then it's also really cool because it's another way to connect with your body and just, it's super cool.
Our bodies are fascinating, and they are talking to you all the time. Your whole body, but specifically your lady bits and pieces. Like they've done so many studies. I'm doing a video on it, so I'm very excited about it, but there's a video on just like how many different like nervous systems and everything intersect with the genitals and the brain, and how much information is like transferred back and forth between those. They say it's like a second. Well, if you think your gut is like your second brain, they're like your vagina is your third brain. Like it's so smart, and it's talking to you all the time. And all you have to do is listen. Just pay attention to what's in your underwear. And if you like, I think that it's beautiful touching your cervix every day. Just like it gives you, I think it's great. You connect with your body, and it's just a way to just be really come home to yourself. Anyways, that was a tangent.
Yeah. So anyways, you'll get to your body is communicating with you, and you'll see the differences in whatever sort of mucus you have. And the Billings method has been shown to be really an effective form of birth control as well, if you're not into doing any sort of exogenous hormones or oral contraceptives, any of that jazz. Perfect. And then we have one more. And it is called just tracking your basal body temperature. If you guys have heard of this, let us know. So essentially, basal body temperature, this means tracking your temperature every single day. So when you wake up in the morning, you will take your temperature first thing in the morning. Again, this is effective when it is done every single day. And also, if you were out partying the night before, or if you didn't get a full night's sleep, this is also going to affect your body temperature. So it's a little bit relative in that sort of sense. Mm-hmm. Oh, your phone's overheating, Kendra.
My phone is overheating. If you're on Instagram, come and check us out on YouTube because my phone is overheating and it might shut off.
We're doing YouTube on my phone and we're doing Instagram. Anyways, so tracking your temperature every day. So typically the day before you start ovulating, your body temperature is going to rise about 1.5 degrees. And so when your temperature rises this extra degree, you know that you're going to start ovulating the next day, and your temperature can stay elevated up until you finish your period. And if you end up being pregnant, then your temperature is just going to stay elevated, probably for about 3 months. Yeah. So, but it is a very, very slight change. So again, it'll only increase about 1.5 days, and you're going to want to write this down on a chart. You want me to flex? Oh yeah. Sorry, someone just asked me to flex. Okay, so your temperature will only go up a small amount, but make sure you're actually writing this down and you're tracking it. So again, all of these 3 methods can actually be used together as well, because they're all really similar and they all take you doing is daily practice, either whether it's checking your cervix or taking your temperature. Mm-hmm. However, when it comes to basal body temperature, I found this amazing product online that I'm super fascinated in, and it's called the Ava Band. And basically, it's a bracelet that you wear at night, and it tracks your temperature for you while you sleep. And so you will download it with an app on your phone, and it will tell you on your phone, on your online tracker associated with this app, whether or not you're ovulating. And I think this is really super cool. So it takes all of the guesswork out. And in my opinion, this is probably the most effective form of birth control, because it's tuning in with your body like 100% while you're sleeping and tracking your temperature. So I am going to look more into it, and I would love to try it for myself. So I'm actually going to link it below, and we're also going to link Melissa Ramos below if you wanted to check her out as well. And yeah,
I think that's it. With basal body temperature, I don't know if we mentioned basal body temperature and the Billings Method and menstrual tracking. It's 5 days a month. There's actually only 5 days a month that you're actually fertile.
Yeah.
So it's like once your body temperature goes up, like that 1.5 degree, then 5 days.
Yeah.
And then it will stay up throughout your period, but that doesn't mean like after those 5 days, then you're not fertile anymore. And so then you can stop using barriers or have unprotected sex again, and it would be effective, is the theory. Yeah. So 5 days a month. And so it's finding those 5 days. The natural methods are just different ways, whether it's cervical mucus or body temperature, or just menstrual tracking. It's trying to locate those 5 days and find them so that you know those are days that you do not want to be having unprotected sex. Unless you're trying to, get pregnant,
have a baby, so then have all the sex.
That's the lovely thing about the natural birth control methods, because then when you are ready to start or you're conceiving or trying and stuff, you'll already know. You'll be like, great, these are the 5 days I need to hone in on. But
because like Kendra mentioned too, if you are taking hormonal birth control, when you stop taking it, it takes a while for your body to regulate back to like its own homeostasis.
I didn't have my period for 6 months after
I didn't I was also really sick with my eating disorder around the time I went off with my birth control. I didn't get my period for like 3 years, and it was awful. I like prayed for the day I got my period back, and then I got my period back and I learned I had endometriosis, and I was like, this sucks. But yeah. Anyways, that's a different story.
The joys of being a woman.
I'm so grateful I have like a regular period now. And anyways, I hope that we answered your questions. And if you have more questions, please do not hesitate to drop them in the comments below. Whether you're on YouTube, we're actively checking our comments on YouTube as well. So yeah, let's see if
the best time. Well, I just thought one was just like, when is the best chance to have a baby? boy or girl when fertile. I don't, if that's specifically asking, like, we can't control if it's a boy or a girl. I don't know how to do that, but it's when you're fertile, like it's those 5 days. So it's about tracking. And then during those 5 days, that's when you're most fertile. That's when you'll be most likely to conceive. And you'll have a 50% chance of it being a boy or a girl. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Much appreciated.
Well, hey Becca, thanks for watching. Love you, girl. So thanks Nicole for sharing. You got your tubes tied at 26 and your diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer at 31. Wow. Oh I'm so sorry to hear. What a warrior.
Thanks for the love. Yeah.
Cool. Well, if you guys have any more questions, feel free to reach out, whether on YouTube. We have our email as well. If you're on YouTube and you haven't already, you can check us out on Instagram, and you can also reach us on Facebook. And we appreciate your support so much. Mm-hmm. And if you have any suggestions for upcoming lives, we do one every fortnight. So let us know.
Every fortnight. Yep. Great. I love it. It's super Game of Thrones or something. We watch it too much. Coming up on Friday our video, we're almost finished with Sarah's chakra series. It's going to be the throat chakra on Friday and how to balance that nutritionally. And then next week, my final video in the body image series, we're doing 10 ways to feel sexier in your body almost instantly. So you definitely want to check that one out. Yeah, and then we're going to be doing a yoni series soon, all about your vaginas. All about your vaginas. That's what we've been writing. I'm so stoked about it. But yeah, anyways, thank you so much for tuning in. And hopefully we'll
see you soon.
See you soon. Yeah. Bye.
Bye. See if I can turn this on.